Hello and welcome to the Voice of TOD. I'm Tom, and today we're going to talk about one of my favourite things in the entire world, Firefly. This episode, we're going to take a look at the two-parter called Serenity, so parts 1 and 2. And every Wednesday we're going to take a look at the next episode in the series until we get to the film Serenity, which we will also cover to be the final chapter of our journey through talking about Firefly. These reviews will be filled with spoilers, so if you haven't seen Firefly, I would personally vouch for it and tell you to go watch it right now. But you shouldn't really do anything that I say. But I love this series. I think it's well worth a watch. I would say give it 3 episodes. If you've not fallen in love with the characters by that point, it's probably not for you. And that's absolutely fine. But with that, let's talk about Serenity, parts 1 and 2. And the character introductions and the world building and some of my favourite moments in this episode. And where better place to start than the Battle of Serenity Valley. I never used to like this opening. It never really connected with me until maybe a few years ago. It's a totally different tone to what the show is. And it shows a very different Mal, played by Nathan Fillion, who I am a massive fan of. We also get to see Zoe, played by Gina Torres, who's with Mal through thick and thin. But this opening really focuses on Mal as a character. The charismatic sergeant of the Brown Coat Army. He's fighting for freedom against the oppressive alliance that is moving in to take control. It has a very Terminator feel for me. The idea of man against overwhelming technology. We don't see the alliance here. We see their ships, we see their technology. They could be human, they could be alien. We don't know at this point. But this battle is a very significant one for the shape of the universe moving forward, and also for Mal. He's full of belief, he knows what he's doing and the path that he's on. He's also religious, you can tell he's a believer. He has a cross that he wears that you see him comfort himself with before he makes a dangerous charge. He's a man so focused in what he believes is right. He will do anything and fight tooth and nail to achieve it. And then they lose the war. And we jump 6 years to the time frame that the series takes place in. With Mal and Zoe, we also have Jane, played by Adam Baldwin. He is very much the muscle of the group. And we're here with them scavenging a wreck of a vessel in 0G. I want to touch on the 0G stuff because this was shot in 2002. The movement, the deliberate movement, the way the camera works, the shots, it's a very clever way of doing the sequence. I personally buy into the fact that they are in 0G doing these with the cutting the compartments, scavenging the supplies, I guess. And I think that this really holds up even to modern day standard, thinking about shows like The Expanse. But a show like The Expanse that is so focused in science fact, to watch this and how both shows do 0G, and they're both very different shows at the core. Firefly or science fantasy, and The Expanse is science fact. I think this really works. It brings an element of reality and it really does feel real with how 0G is done in Firefly. They're not going to be cheap set pieces to do, especially at this time. But it really works. It also shows that the 3 characters here are well versed in scavenging, or that they're happy to operate in the grey area. And really, they're just trying to get by. And then we meet Wash. played by Alan Tudyk. For me, all of the actors in Firefly were brand new to me when I first watched this. Even Adam Baldwin, who had done so many things before this, I didn't know any of them until I'd seen Firefly. And this is, I think, where my love of each of these characters and these actors comes from, is because this was my first real connection with them. But this introduction is one of the best character introductions I've ever seen. It's so funny, it's so honest, and it's so very wash. We also are introduced to Kaylee, played by Jules State. Kaylee's the ship mechanic. She's really doing everything she can to keep the ship flying. She obviously loves Serenity. It's her home. This is her family. And she's very much the daughter of the group. She's innocent, she's charming. I mean, technically she is a Disney princess now, regardless of how I feel about that. But she's just a really wholesome character who I don't think gets enough credit through the series. She has a bit of a rough time this episode though. But I don't know how you cannot love Kaylee. Big part for Firefly, for me, is the opening credits as well. Not necessarily the way they play out, but the theme song. So many TV shows over the decades have had amazing TV themes that stick in people's heads. For me, this is my favourite. It's even my ringtone on my phone. That's how much I love it. And when the phone rings, I will sit and listen to the ringtone rather than answer the call sometimes. Depends who it is. I'm a little bit fanatical about Firefly maybe, but I think this is just an incredible theme, and it makes me smile every time I hear it. Big theme of the show is that these characters are operating in said grey area. It's not strictly legal. It's very kind of oldie worldy how they do it, and the idea of piracy. But the show doesn't make you think anything otherwise. It doesn't hide the fact. As lovable and charismatic as these people are, they're not good people doing good for good people. They're just trying to get by. They're fighting for their lives. Their loyalties are to themselves and the people closest to them. Unless you're Jane, and then it's just to yourself, really. But they are a family, and as we introduce the final characters in this episode, even then you start to feel that chemistry and that connection of the cast, as it all works together. And speaking of bringing new characters, this is where we have our introduction to Inara, played by Morena Baccarin, who I absolutely love. But her introduction is done in a way to further compound that idea that these people on Serenity are living in the grey area. In that her job as a companion, a very well respected job in this society, it's joked, but I think it's by Mal, but it's joked that she's the only one making an honest living, but it's also true. As a companion, she is the only one making an honest living, and she does bring an air of respectability to the crew. And I wish we got so much more from her than we do. But I understand why. To round out our cast and our core group of people that we're going to spend time with, it's here on Persephone when Serenity lands. Kaylee is tasked with picking up some passengers to bring in some money and try and keep the ship flying. The first one, Shepherd Buck, played by the wonderful Ron Glass, may he rest in peace. Buck is a Christian priest who is spreading the word of God to the Outer Rim and trying to help those in need. He's going to have some challenges that he has to face, and he has a past. We don't know what at this point, but there's definitely something about Shepherd Buck and his journey. We also meet Simon, played by Sean Mayer. Simon he's a wealthy surgeon, very shifty. The reasons are unknown, but he is brought on as a passenger with his with his large He's brought on as a passenger, and he has quite a lot of luggage with him. And then our final passenger that we pick up is Lawrence Dobson, played by Carlos Jacot. Again, unknown. We don't really get a big introduction to him. He seems fairly friendly. It's probably alright. And this is where, while that's going on with Kaylee, Miles, Zoe and Jane head off to meet Badger, played by Max Shepard, who is a recurring character, and I like Badger. He's a lot of fun. Again, he's an arse, but he's a lot of fun. But as we move through the town of the docks of Persephone, we get to see what the world is in the future. This different culture that Joss Whedon and Tim and has created with this. The mix of the American and Japanese cultures converging as the two dominant cultures of Earth, spreading out across the galaxy. This isn't a fancy, futuristic, almost alien world covered with tech. This just looks like a market town, something that you'd expect in any of the towns and villages pretty much anywhere in Earth in present day. It feels very familiar, but that merging of cultures is slightly alien. It works really well, and it builds into a world that is both fascinating and comfortable enough to want to explore. I think it really works. Another scene that I absolutely loved, and this is really across the whole series, but in this episode we get our first, and it's the meals that the characters share with each other, where all the crew get together with, at this point, the passengers, and they just have what's like a family meal, just a gathering. It's a recurring theme, but I think it's something that really makes the show stand out to everything else. You get a good feel for each individual character with this episode, and this is an extended episode, but you really start to learn more about them with this. And that's why I think this should have been the pilot, the premiere episode for the show, but Fox decided against that. But there's so much here, so many little details that upon rewatching, and if you're like me, rewatching again, you just pick up on. And these scenes, these moments are wonderful. And there's an interview with some of the cast. I think it's on the Serenity behind the scenes features, where they actually talk about these moments where they would all get together in the galley and actually have meals and spend time with each other. And I think it really comes through. You get the family vibe with moments like this. And it's just after this point that we get to meet our final member of the core crew, River. Summer Glau is fantastic. I love her arc with this and the film. The film is more about River than anybody else. But this is a character that I wish we got so much more of, just like so many of them in this show. River has the potential to change the world around her, but she's a big danger to her brother Simon and everybody else on the ship. And that is going to be, again, a reoccurring theme, certainly in the film. But there's so much more that you could have done with her. And I think Summer plays her fantastically. She's suffered so much trauma, she's shut down. And we really sort of see her at this point from episode 1. She has the childlike naivety and almost innocence. Simon is there to try and help her grow and relearn how to be in human society. But it's not going to be easy. And that's part of the charm of River. And anything could happen. Literally anything could happen around River because she's so chaotic. It's another element to the show that really works and just pulls everybody in, I think. And leading from that scene, we get Simon's backstory, I guess it is, where he talks about himself and River, their childhood, how smart he is, how much smarter she is. I think Sean's delivery in this scene is brilliant. It's so heartfelt. You can see the emotional connection that he already has with the character of Simon and thinking about his sister. He went through hell to free her. And in this scene, even Mal, someone who is just trying to remove everybody close to him, he's pulled in. He sees in Simon something very similar to himself. That idea that he would do anything for those he loves, regardless of how much of an arsehole he is. The interesting thing with Mal as our main hero, and all of the characters, but Mal specifically, is that he is a flawed character. He's done and continues to do questionable things. He says questionable things. He's cruel to people at times, especially Inara, but he's also has the potential for so much growth. And I think it's growth that is fulfilled in this series and certainly with the film. But it's characters like that that we're missing in the modern storytelling of certain TV shows, certain films, where characters aren't just given everything they need and told to just do whatever. He's done things, he's seen things, he needs to atone and he needs to grow, just like everybody in here. And that's why they're so fascinating. We also get mention of the Reavers, who are, I would argue, the big bad of the Serenity universe. I've had a few mentions of them up to this point, but we get a proper look at them now. Not of them themselves as what they are, but their ships and talk of what they do. The myth of the Reavers. They are humans who, as we're told in the show, humans who have spent so much time in space they've lost their way. They've gone crazy. They are psychotic. They are based on aggression and strength. And all they want to do is maim, kill, rape. That's it. They've just gone crazy. Their ships fly without proper containment of radiation, so who knows what kind of a mess they are. It's a concept that's been around for decades, maybe even hundreds of years. The idea of man going crazy and doing unspeakable things, and losing, or a race of people losing their humanity. But I find it fascinating. And it really does give a real dark edge to the TV show. This constant threat that is out there that nobody really knows anything about. Their stories, their nightmares. But out here in the Outer Rim, they're a very serious threat and a big reality. We do get a shot here when we're talking about the Reavers for our first interaction with them, of Inara's vial of poison, which early on was a major point in the story. If you want to find out more, you can Google it. It's probably quite easy to find. I don't want to go into it here because it didn't happen in the episode. Thankfully, we didn't get that progression of the story, and Inara is still very much here with us. Because I love Inara. But there is a lot of darkness in this show. For a show that is... The writing is so tight, the humour is excellent, the cast are just enjoying themselves with everything they do. There is a lot of darkness. It definitely has undertones and moments of real threat, but it's brilliantly written. It's brilliantly done. I don't know why Fox wouldn't have had this as the opening episode. I can't get my head around it. The opening episode, for those who don't know, was the train job, which we will be talking about next week. But this episode has, yes, it's an extended double episode, but it lets you get to know each of the characters, the world building, everything, all the setup is here to sell you on the show. And anybody that's looking for something like this, there is the action, there's the humour, but the world building is so much more important for establishing a franchise. I don't know why. It's almost like Fox didn't have any faith in this idea. They wanted the quick hit of Joss Whedon's Buffy or Angel, and Joss wanted to do this. I'm glad he did this, and I know that Joss isn't seen in a very good light anymore. He's had issues, he's done things that nobody would be proud of. And it's all been aired very publicly, certainly recently. But separating the man from his work, he has given us Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel, Firefly, Dollhouse, the first 2 Avengers films, which I would argue the first one is one of the most amazing feats of cinema. He knows how to make lovable characters and how to craft dialogue that pulls you in and really engages you. The Whedon style is quite old hat now. It's been done time and time again, maybe even to death. But back in 2002, this was very fresh. I mean, this is pre-Battlestar Galactica remake, which is a totally different show. But what Battlestar did for TV was it changed how people viewed what could be done and paved the way for things like Game of Thrones, like Watchmen. This doesn't do anything like that. This is just a fun adventure show, effectively, to dumb it down to its simplest form. But this is also very different. I think I've mentioned that the cast to me were pretty much unknown. And now I will follow their careers forever. You know, Nathan Fillion is... I will watch everything he does. I absolutely love the guy. I would love to buy the guy a beer because of the joy that him and his TV shows and his career has brought me. Started with Firefly. Firefly is a show, and I've watched it so many times. I mean, I joke, say I watch it every year. I probably do watch it every year without realising. But when I was watching this back, I was sitting there quoting the lines. I was laughing at jokes I've laughed at for over a decade. It's the greatest thing for me. Because when I first watched it as a teenager, it was at a time where I think I just needed something. And even now, when I'm low or when I'm struggling, I can put this on and it'll get me through the tough times. I have that connection with it. There's just something about these characters that I get lost in. And there's other things that I love, but nothing really grips me like this. Firefly has a magical place for me. I don't know why, I don't know what it is about this and not Buffy the Vampire Slayer, not Angel. Because they're very similar shows, different genres, but they're very similar in setup. But there's something about this that just works for me. Which is why I wanted to review it and do each episode individually. The Expanse has just finished, we don't have anything else to talk about outside of WandaVision, but that's on Fridays. But I wanted to keep the sci-fi theme, and for me this is the perfect thing to talk about because of my love for this. And the idea of my channel was to talk about the things that I love and share the games that I love. And this just seemed like a logical step. So I hope that you have enjoyed this. Let me know in the comments what you think of Firefly, what you think of this episode specifically, how you came into it. But next week we will be talking about The Train Job, which was the opening for the season on Fox when it was originally aired. It is a great episode. I think they're all great episodes, but I'm biased that way. So every Wednesday we'll be talking about a new episode of Firefly until we are done with this series. It means a lot that people want to reach out and talk, and even watching my videos means the world. So as always, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.